Welcome to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, respective radio stations island-wide, online viewers, and Tel TV Plus Channel 15 viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Marinka Gums, to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika, fellow colleague ministers, members of the press, and to the people of St. Martin, good morning and blessed day to all. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with important updates on several key matters. Vehicle tax. The deadline to pay vehicle tax for 2025 was Friday, February 28, 2025. I want to thank all vehicle owners who have already made their payments on time and fulfilled their obligations. For those who have not yet paid, I strongly encourage you to settle your vehicle tax as soon as possible to avoid penalties. As of Friday, February 28, 2025, a total of 14,310 vehicle owners have completed their payments, resulting in a total collection of 4.7 million guilders. This amount is in line with last year's collection at the end of February. To ensure compliance, vehicle tax controls will begin soon in collaboration with the Ministry of Justice. I urge all vehicle owners to pay promptly to avoid any issues once these controls are implemented. To make payments easier and more convenient, we have introduced a new online payment option. In addition to credit card payments, you can now pay via Sento, allowing seamless transactions through WIB and Orco accounts. Having personally used Sento, I can confirm that the process is fast and efficient. I was able to complete my payment and receive my receipt within 5 minutes. I encourage everyone who has not yet paid their vehicle tax to do so at the receiver's office or via the online payment methods as soon as possible. Let's all do our part to remain compliant and ensure a smooth process for everyone. Now on to some hot button items. SCDF subsidy. With regard to the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation, a subsidy was requested and granted to support the organization of Carnival 2025. The Council of Ministers approved the subsidy, which was granted in line with the subsidy provided to SCDF in April 2024 via the marketing budget. As such, the SCDF subsidy was currently booked under the marketing post in line with the manner in which it was provided last year to SCDF. The subsidy was paid out based on the available budget in 2024 for marketing, which approximates to 4 million guilders annually. However, to ensure proper budget allocation, the Council of Ministers has resolved to rectify this matter in the 2025 budget by reclassifying the subsidy amount paid out under the marketing post to the appropriate subsidy line item through a budget amendment. This adjustment will ensure that the allocation is aligned with budgetary principles and properly reflected in the 2025 amended budget. Carnival remains a key cultural event that has been part of St. Martin's heritage for over 50 years, drawing both local and international participation and visitors. This annual celebration plays a significant role in cultural expression, economic stimulation, and tourism promotion, making its successful execution a priority for government. A next hot button item, TALEM. From a financial perspective, I would like to provide an update regarding TALEM. The government has included a guarantee of 5 million guilders on behalf of TALEM in the 2025 budget, which was unanimously approved by Parliament. while this 5 million guilder guarantee will become available once the 2025 budget is enacted, our proposal is to provide TLM with this support in stages rather than disbursing the full amount at once. It is essential that we support our local government-owned entities while ensuring that there is proper oversight and financial accountability. By allocating the funds in phases, we can better monitor the company's financial progress, ensure efficient utilization of resources, and maintain fiscal responsibility. The government remains committed to supporting TLM's development while ensuring that public funds are managed effectively to promote long-term sustainability for our government-owned companies. Caribbean Guilder transition. The Caribbean Guilder will officially be issued on March 31st, 2025. There will be a transition period of 3 months in which both the Caribbean Guilder and the Netherlands Antillean Guilder will be accepted as legal tender, which means you will be able to pay with both currencies during the months of April through June 2025. I want to assure everyone that the transition is expected to be smooth, and additional information will be provided to ensure the public is well informed. In the coming weeks, I will be releasing a separate video to explain the details of this transition and address any concerns. And finally, hot button item, Budget 2025 and the end text process. Yesterday, the Minister of General Affairs, the Prime Minister, and I signed off on a letter to Parliament with the support of the Council of Ministers, detailing the technical issues and incorporation of amendments that have caused delays in finalizing the end text. Parliament was informed of all technical issues relating to the amendments. However, let me highlight the two main issues. One, some amendments were proposed at the general ledger level, while the 2025 budget is structured at the economic category level. This misalignment means that certain amendments do not directly align with the budget presentation at the economic category level, which is the approved structure for Parliament's approval. In 2024, the budget was presented at a more detailed level. However, in 2025, it was adjusted and presented at the economic category level in accordance with Article 6 of the Comptabiliteitslandverordening, which states that Parliament approves the budget per economic category. The reason for this adjustment was based on collaboration with TWO and the Landspakket in improving the budgetary process of country Sint Maarten. Nevertheless, the Comptabiliteitslandverordening, particularly Articles 2, 6, and 43, supports the position that technical classification differences do not equate to non-compliance, provided that the amendment adheres to the approved financial limits and intended budgetary framework. Number 2, cascading ripple effects of amendments. Several amendments introduce changes that trigger adjustments to subtotals, totals, and other related budget components. In some instances, an amendment might instruct a single line item adjustment, but of course, this single line item adjustment will subsequently adjust the subtotals and totals stated in the budget numbers book. However, in some instances, the issue stems from the fact that the adjustments of the subtotals or totals were not explicitly stated. Key here is explicitly stated in the amendment note. It is also important to clarify that in previous years, amendment notes did not always explicitly include all ripple effects either. Nevertheless, due to the extent and volume of amendments this year, a total of 7, these omissions have caused an issue in finalizing the end text. This highlights the need for a more structured approach to future budget amendments to ensure all necessary adjustments are clearly outlined and accounted for in the amendment process. It is important to note that each amendment, both those introduced by government and those from the members of parliament, contain technical issues. While I now refer to them as technical issues, I want to make it explicitly clear that not all legal minds view them as such. Enhancing the budget amendment process to prevent similar issues from occurring in the future, the government proposes collaborating with Parliament to develop standardized templates for amendment notes and amendments. These templates will help ensure that all necessary components, including financial and legal considerations, are properly addressed, reducing discrepancies and improving efficiency. Additionally, the government suggests initiating a dialogue with relevant stakeholders to determine whether, for future amendments, the totals reflected by the ripple effect must be explicitly stated, or whether a general reference to the ripple effect would be sufficient. Moving forward, the Ministry of Finance will coordinate amendment notes, ensuring that financial and legal matters are thoroughly reviewed before submission. These measures, based on lessons learned from this current process, will help improve accuracy, transparency, and efficiency in the budget amendment procedure. I look forward, as a matter of fact, the Council of Ministers look forward to receiving a response to the letter provided to Parliament, as it will be key in determining the way forward in finalizing and enacting the 2025 budget. Ensuring a timely resolution will allow us to move forward with the necessary financial processes and effectively implement the unanimously 2025 approved budget. It is crucial that we work together to resolve this matter and enact this important budget for the country of St. Martin. This is not about political maneuvering. Our sole objective is to determine the best way forward to finalize the budget enactment. I want to make it very clear that the budget submitted to Parliament is not the issue. The challenge lies in the incorporation of the approved amendments. Had there been no amendments, the budget, as submitted, would have already been published. Therefore, our collective focus must be on ensuring that these amendments are processed correctly in line with the intentions of Parliament so that the budget can move forward without further delay. Conclusion. As the Minister of Finance, I remain committed to ensuring transparent, accountable, and efficient financial management. I will continue to provide regular updates as we navigate these key matters and look forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure, Patrice Gums Jr., to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Good morning, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, fellow colleague ministers. Let me begin this morning by speaking very briefly about the Inspection Department's QR code and the updates available thus far. If you recall, earlier this year, we launched our QR code for complaints. Thus far, we have received approximately 30 unique complaints, the majority being complaints concerning wastewater, road repair, of course, and permits. Though this was intended for the Inspection Department, we have received feedback from most other departments in VROMI, and even some feedback for other ministries. This is indicative of a gap and a need for improved two-way communication between the public and the ministry. For those who have sent in those concerns, thank you. Next week, we'll be hosting meetings on a way to properly enhance communication and look forward to offering that update within 2 weeks' time. Regarding the Waste Ordinance and Waste Authority, as part of the disbursement conditions towards interventions in the landfill, 4 conditions must be met. I'm happy to announce that in collaboration with the NRPB, we have finally posted the terms of reference to establish to achieve 2 of these disbursement conditions. One is the establishment of a waste authority, and to update the existing waste ordinance for solid waste. This is currently posted to NRPB's website and will be also shared on government's website on the Tenders tab, which you can find under Procurement. Please read the requirements carefully as you're expected to split your financial and technical proposals and send them to tenders@nrpbsxm.org before March 17, 2025 at 4 p.m. The new Waste Authority is another step towards better management of our solid waste and is in line with the trip we took to Aruba. Please strictly follow the guidelines in the terms of reference and be sure to make the March 17th deadline. A bit of further information, the 1.4 million euro subsidy that we requested and were granted by the Netherlands will be used to pay these consultants, the legal firm who will draft these, as agreed upon, to work towards better enhancing our waste solutions in solid waste management. On the topic of Westview, the development in Kupukoi, last week I was asked to confirm/clarify statements on the ongoing construction taking place at Jordan Road, number 11 in Kupukoi. On February 9, 2024, a building permit, BP number 203-2022, was published in the National Gazette of March 1, 2024, for a residential development on Maybrief 13, 1968. The permit pertains to Westview, a proposed 18-story development, 3 subterranean levels underground and 15 levels above ground, consisting of a condo, hotel, and commercial spaces. Over the past week, I have requested documentation regarding this file, met with the affected homeowners, and visited the site to reconcile the plan with what is on the ground. I've also reached out to those involved in the development of Westview. I can confirm the following. The entry in the National Gazette only referenced one parcel of land, Maybrief number 13, 1968, for a residential development. The project in its entirety consists of an additional 3 parcels, Maybriefen 123, 1971, 161, 1978, and 34, 1973. The wrong classification of this development as residential and the omission of the 3 other parcels does not reflect the full scope of the project and the nature of the development. The lack of all correct information may have had an impact on the ability of concerned parties to object or query an approved permit, as is their right by law. Up to this morning, new information has come to me, and as such, I'm kindly asking to allow me to keep comments limited on this until I review the case in its entirety. In the meantime, we will review the manner in which permits are published in the National Gazette to ensure that we also comply with our own legal obligations. As it relates itself to the question posed, I believed, by the Daily Herald 2 weeks prior, the same topic of the National Gazette, and information regarding permits that were not published, that were lately published during my tenure, I have the following information as well. November this year, the government of St. Martin, the Permits Department, hired a new technical administrator. This person is the person responsible for issuing and updating, working with the EZNV in the publication of the National Gazette's permits. The technical administrator that was previously hired, its contract ended exactly in May. Between May to October, no technical administrator was available, and as such, within the ministry, there was no one who took it upon themselves responsibility to have these published. So, to the clarification from the Daily Herald, indeed, between May to October, none of these permits, unfortunately, were published on time. Since the period October till now, all permits are in place, and it speaks very much about the capacity issues within government and as well the need to collaborate and improve government efficiency. So from my side, my apologies to everyone who between the period of May to October would have seen that there was a missing publication, and as we work to improve this, from my side as the minister, I'm taking a much more hands-on approach to ensure that loop is filled. Just a bit of information, once a permit comes to the minister, he signs it, and then the publication becomes an administrative task. But from my side, I will make sure from the political side, I take responsibility to ensure that is handled properly going forward. And finally, tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports and myself will be going live on Facebook to give a number of updates on collaborations that we are currently doing together. Join us and feel free to ask your pressing and clarifying questions and remain available and transparent to Youth People St. Martin, and look forward to sharing the first 3 months of this term. And with regards to contacting my press person, I will share with the press after this press briefing who you can contact to ensure that we are able to properly align and get all questions coming from my ministry, because as you can imagine, there's quite a lot of things that happen here, and I would like to ensure that everyone gets all proper information and on time. With that, I end my comments.
Thank you, Minister Gomes, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Natalie Tacklin, to address you. Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Good morning to the members of the press and to those viewing, watching, listening, wherever you may be. It's good to see you all again. It's been a couple of weeks since I was here. So mostly I had brief comments because, you know, the work continues, and I don't think we need to give too many statements about the day-to-day here too much, but I wanted to highlight a couple, and I'm mostly just here to take any questions from the media. But I did want to speak briefly on visits that have been ongoing. So last week I visited the Foreigner Detention Center, which is located in Simpson Bay next to the police station, to have a look at what the facility looks like. For this year, we have budget earmarked through a project from the Netherlands to make structural repairs to this building and bring it back up to standard for a foreigner detention. Years ago, under previous administrations, the decision was made to use it as a huis van bewaring, a house of detention. So as such, it needs to be streamlined a bit more to, again, fit the needs of foreigner detention. And again, we see the influx, and our island remains a hub for other islands and for people trying to transit, and for, you know, when it comes to human smuggling, human trafficking. And I think we need to be aware of that from the immigration perspective, and also be ready to respond to those and to house people in a place that is meant for immigrants and not for detainees, because there is a difference between the two. Besides that, I also visited the MLC. One of the things that's high on my priority list is our youth. I'm very worried about our youth in this country, and we're looking to see from the justice perspective how we can do more in crime prevention. I know that this is also an issue for the Ministry of VSA. It's an issue for the Ministry of Education, but I feel that as the Minister of Justice, I also have an obligation when it comes to crime prevention, and not just to wait until we have people that are in the justice system. So I've spoken before of collaboration with the Ministry of Education, and also looking into other avenues to sponsor projects through the Crime Fund when it comes to crime prevention. And to that effect, I had a very productive meeting with the St. Martin Youth Brigade. So we are exploring different opportunities for us to collaborate. In addition, you know, we keep talking about building a new prison up in Point Blanche, but what is also a priority is where we put our underage youth when they are sentenced, and how we can provide further rehabilitation for them, and really a place where we can provide them the assistance that they deserve. So that also has my attention. Further to that, I also had a meeting this week with the Inmate Association at Point Blanche. That is also one of my priorities, to remain in touch also and have regular meetings with the Inmate Association, because of course I think it's important for me as minister to also hear from those that are sitting up there, not just from the management of the prison, but also to really speak to the inmates. We had a productive discussion, and I have some homework to do for them to look at, you know, what we can offer to the inmates to help them, because again, I can't just tell people that we're getting a new prison. There are people in Point Blanche right now, and they also deserve to have our attention and to be provided with rehabilitation, with something to do with themselves, and also tools to reintegrate themselves back into society, because we don't want them to end up there again. So that was, again, a productive meeting. Besides that, I also wanted to point, but I know that it was in the media and the press already, with respect to extra controls from the police, but also during the regatta. I want to wish everybody a very safe regatta, and to have fun, but also please keep to all the all our traffic rules and all the laws of this country. We are trying to enforce the laws in this country and have less lawlessness here. And I think that that's been evident by the increased controls from KPSM. And I think also they often update on what the results have been of those. So there also has been a traffic deviation on Saturday and Sunday. So I asked that everybody keep up to date with that. So I believe from what I read, it's if you're trying to go into Port-au-Plaisance, you will be required to go around the Causeway roundabout and come back. So there will be no left turns allowed. And this is to help alleviate the traffic. So those were the kind of brief points that I wanted to touch on. And of course, I remain available for any questions, which I'm sure will come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Marcelina, to address you. Prime Minister Marcelina, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. People of St. Martin, good morning. Representatives of the media, the ministers present here, CoM, good morning. For clarity's sake, there is some misunderstanding concerning the senior citizen relief program for the invoices for GEBE. And I think just for clarity's sake, it's I think important for me to put some accent on some clarity for people to be able to apply for this relief. First of all, the applicant has to be above the 65 years. You have to have a valid ID. You have to submit a recent GEBE bill on your name. If you are applying as a spouse of the person on which the name is documented in the invoice, then you should have a proof of marriage. You have to, of course, fill in the application form by GEBE. And a discussion point that we are discussing on with GB is that sometimes you have an agreement with the rent for a house or apartment, while the GEBE bill stays on the name of the one renting out the place to you. And I'm in discussion now with GB to see if we can accommodate this group, for example, by presenting a lease or rent contract between the abonnee and the one that is the tenant of the house. This is something that has been in discussion. I said I'm going to make use of this press briefing just for people to know that we are working on it for this senior citizen relief by GEBE. Further, we are still busy working on, it's quite complex, the mission that we have to see how we're going to mitigate the high energy bills that is actually a big stress for our people of our community that this government is realizing. But until now, we are with still all stakeholders in negotiations. And of course, I would like this to be ready, preferable yesterday than today, but I have to follow the right path for us to have the right information to take the right decision. There is a lot more that I can discuss. I see that the ministers presented a lot of items and issues already. I will await for your questions, and I will, together with the other ministers of my Council of Ministers, I will try to accommodate your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister Marcelina, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. We now move over to the question and answer session, and Bibi Hadshaw of Vestament News, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, ministers. My first question to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Dr. Luc Marcelina, as the person responsible for general affairs, P&O, everywhere else, with the government civil servants, your organization, I'd like to know if there was any amendment to the LMA. If there is one, where can I find it, Prime Minister? reasons for me asking this question is that since 2024, I'm aware of at least 2 or 3 civil servants that are under investigation and have been suspended. They're not indicted. Recently, we have a civil servant that have been indicted and have not been suspended. So now I'm looking to see if there have been amendments to the LMA that I am not aware. So this is why I'm asking you to shed light on that part of my question.
Yes, I will, of course. I do not think that there have been amendments to articles in the LMA. I think that you are not reading good the articles in the LMA. But before I go to what I just stated, to start with, we had about 2 weeks ago, a question concerning some challenges on the work floor with harassment. And I stated that considering the confidentiality and the integrity of the organization, that is constantly a discussion. I believe, and every opportunity that I get, I come back and state that I think that this platform is not the platform to discuss internal affairs, especially because it concerns individuals in our society, and also realizing that we are a small society and we are very vulnerable. On the other side, if we start discussing all individual matters here on this platform, it's going to make this government organization less attractive to work for, because at a certain moment there is no confidentiality, there is no trust, everything is going to be openly discussed, and I think that is wrong. And every opportunity that I get as Prime Minister leading this organization now, I think I really have to elevate the level of protecting actually the confidentiality of our civil servants. And that is also a way to promote the government apparatus as an attractive place for people to work. If everybody knows that every details in this organization, people think that we have the right to discuss it en public for everybody, for the entertainment, I think it is a wrong path the way we would like to see the integrity of our organization. That is a standpoint that I have, and I will always continue maintaining that standpoint. On the other side, if we go to the question about amendments in the LMA, I think that we are referring to a few articles. Article 86, Section 1, Article 92, Section A. And if we read those articles, we start with Article 92. We have also Article 86. It stands that if we look at the Chapter 8, disciplinary penalties, it stands by Article 86. An official who fails to comply with the obligations imposed on him or whom otherwise breaches a duty, the competent authority, in this case is the minister, may impose disciplinary action. May impose disciplinary action. That is Article 86, Chapter 8, concerning disciplinary penalties. We have also Article 92, and 92A states, without prejudice to the previous of Article 86, the official may be authorized by the competent authority to suspend from office. It does not say it must, you have to, it may, and in this case it's not a must, it can be applied. Article 83, Division 1.A, if the case is a custody, then it's the official shall be suspended from office by operation if the candidate, the person, is in custody. Until now, there is no citizen in this specific case that you're discussing that is in custody. So in that particular moment, it is not an obligatory decision that it must take place. And in this case, we are awaiting the outcome of the organization, of the court, of the case. And whatever the case, the court decision case may be, we have to respect that. And that is what we're going to do too. So in conclusion, there were no amendments to the LMA. It's just a matter of reading carefully the articles and applying them correctly in this case, for example. That is the answer that I have for you concerning your question.
Then, Prime Minister, you're
Yeah.
forcing me to ask now for a specific case, because last year there were at least 2 civil servants that I can point out off the bat. One from facilities and one from DCOM. Both suspended because of an investigation. How do you determine that may? Because in one case, you're having an indictment by the court.
Yeah.
Here, you're having just an investigation internally. So how do you measure the may? And then
the cases that you're referring to is before my time. I assumed office in May the 3rd. I have now the responsibility of this case, and it's questioned to me now the decision and stance that I have. That is the explanation that I gave you. And I think moving forward, that is where I stand now. And all court decisions will be respected. And I repeat again, I do not think these specific cases, this is the right platform to discuss these cases.
And if I may ask you, Prime Minister,
No,
since
you may
are
not.
there.
Prime Minister, we will move along as I would like to allow
Okay.
other members of the media to pose questions. Emily of Island 90 Radio, you have the floor.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Question for you.
Yeah.
In previous Council of Ministers briefings, we've asked about the governing program.
Yes.
The fact is, the coalition is a coalition of 4 different parties with very different views. And as you correctly have said in the past, this is coming up with a governing program is a process of discussions, compromise, consensus building. But it is the blueprint for what the government will be doing for the next 4 years.
Yep.
You had promised that it would be done 3 months from the time you took office, which was last week. Can you please update us? What's the status
Very good.
of that?
Yes. Of course, it had to be last week. I have 1 week of delay. My purpose is with my government and coalition to finalize the governing program that is actually finalized already. We had, for example, last night a coalition meeting on this. We had several, of course, already. And we have one more next week, Monday, but actually it's technically finalized already. And I expect to have this governing program ready for the end of next week to be handed over. So I have a small delay of a week, unfortunately, but it's we have to think it over good. The biggest attention that we want in this governing program is to make sure that traditionally we are here forming a government with 7 ministries on their own responsibility, doing what they have to do with their portfolio. And a big challenge at the end of the day is to actually recall that we are doing this all with one big purpose for the people of St. Martin. And what you see is that we're trying now that instead of actually detailing it vertically for each ministry, is also to see how we can interact more and try to prevent island isolation of ministries. That has always been a challenge, not only for the government of St. Martin, but for each country. It's always challenging, of course, to make sure that you have a good line of accessibility to your ministry, good line of communication, and also try to align projects, make sure that all ministries that can contribute to the bigger purpose of that item on your governing program, to make sure that you have them all aligned together. And that is also a process of a young country of St. Martin to move forward in the face of trying to constantly be aware of the risk that you have to isolate yourself in a ministry while being critical with the fact that you have to promote the unification and uniformity and cooperation to get more productive and efficient in governing St. Martin.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Emil. I would now like to invite Jacqueline Hoffman of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you. My question is for the Minister of VROMI.
Yep.
Minister, when your party, PFP, campaigned for the elections, campaigned against overdevelopment of the island, it voiced concerns about the oceans development in Simpson Bay. That project has permits, and developers have enlarged those permits and printed them on the gate of the building site for everybody to see. There are other commercial developments like Dolce in Beacon Hill, the Phoenician, Villa Sasha, Drake Residence, and in Cookcoid Westview that are approved under residential permits, while these are commercial developments. These permits are not printed. The people don't know about what was approved or what was not approved. There is no knowledge of civil works permits. And while Oceans had to invest before they started and got the mortgage from the bank, they invested $1 million in cleaning that area that was very polluted. It was the site of a former cement factory. So they improved first the terrain and the water. They took a lot of out of the water. But in the Westview, there was a green zone, the only green zone in Jordan Village. And now without permits, this has been destroyed. And that's been going on for the last year, and I'm daily receiving videos. Now also this morning, they continued excavating this morning, again for building without permits. There's no confirmed civil works permit. Why is this not put on hold until you have figured out what is what?
Thank you, Jacqueline, for the question. I think what's very important here is to realize what you said exactly. All of those developments you mentioned have been issued between 2018 and before I actually came to office. If I have to spend every moment investigating every single development, which we are doing, I'll tell it to you, it's very time consuming. What's the second point to also realize is that there is indeed the Dolce, the Phoenician, everything. Indeed, like I stated in the press briefing, these are things that we are looking into because what we've realized is that what is deemed as residential is because people tend to live there. If you look at what happens in the banking world, when you have 4 units and above, that immediately becomes commercial. Why is it that within the government, we list that as residential, but for the banking, that's commercial? So all of these things, before I can make sudden moves that will actually cost money. And I think it's very important to realize that if I have to halt works that have permits without solid grounds, I open myself and the government of St. Martin to litigation. So while correctly stated that myself and my party campaigned very heavily on overdevelopment being an issue, and we remain committed to managing and bringing about sustainable development, on the flip side, we also have to make sure that what we are seeing is actually in line with what we're being told, because the issues that end up happening is oftentimes we get information from persons who are concerned and we don't get the other side of the story. That has happened already to me in several of the projects you've spoken about. If it's right or wrong is a different situation, but my entire attempt right now currently is really about making sure I have all information, because what I'm not going to do is receive information from, let's say, for example, the Prime Minister that says that the Minister of Finance is being wrong, and then we ask Minister of Finance, there's a document that states, for example, well, this person agreed to XYZ in the process. That does not change my view on environmental protection. I remain committed to it. This is exactly why we have put in place certain things to happen. So developments that are currently ongoing that has never been considered by other ministers of VROMI. So the reality is, to indicate my lack of care for environmental and sustainable development being linked to my not doing anything, a lot of work happens in the background. I think what's very important, and I brought it up today in the press briefing too, and it's actually mentioned the governing program that Prime Minister spoke about very briefly. A lot of times people become the Minister of VROMI and they want to do quick interventions and, big projects and big things, and they don't structurally address the ministry in a way to prevent such things from happening. I can confirm with you the following. the property West View in the draft zoning is for 3 stories. But the draft zoning is not passed in Parliament. So it gives the minister the discretion to deviate. That deviation has to be well substantiated. Very often we've seen going through the files, it's never well substantiated. But the reality is because it's not illegal, he or she can do it. The question now becomes ethics. So once again, once a permit is issued, I can't stop it because it goes against something that's been permitted. It's always that fine balance between what is ethically and legally correct. Because what we found very often is these legal loopholes that many ministers are advised to use to ensure that what they agree to, for whatever reason they agree to it, can pass. Secondly, indeed, no civil work permits have been issued. We've confirmed that up until this morning, and as such, we will now ensure that a number of the things that have to get done to rectify that is done, which could include, for example, a stop order for works. Noting as well that within the space of 1 week, every single day, as Minister of VROMI, Minister of Finance, as Prime Minister, we get information at every single hour. And at every single hour, that new information changes how we decide and how we execute our work. And I just want to confirm as well that, it's very nice to look from the outside and see what is wrong. I think if I wasn't a civil servant before this job, I would be completely drowned by now because there's a lot of administrative pollution that has happened over the last 4, 10, 15, 20 years. So to address the issues of environmental protection and what has happened all those years, it takes unraveling sometimes a cobweb of, I won't say a superlative, but it takes unraveling a cobweb of mess. Enforcing, for example, stop orders, I need capacity. So it may seem that we're not making moves oftentimes in everything from roadworks, but it all takes capacity, and guess what? The enforcing legislation is not there. So rest assured, the work is going on in the background. It's making sure that what we do is legally sound, because there are always good intentions, but good intentions and executed well can lead to negative and legal consequences. So for me, it's critical that whatever we have and we know we're trying to address, we address properly. We have never strayed from environmental protection. I think I can tell you I'm probably one of the very first, if not only, or very few ministers of VROMI who actually have sent back lots of advices because they don't match the deed. And that remains my commitment. If the process takes long, that's what it will take, because what I'm not going to do is these ad hoc interventions to end up on the paper just for political mileage. I like to do things correctly. This is really a time of investigating what needs to change, how we're going to change it. In the last 3 years, we execute. Because what happens oftentimes, people jump up and do things and they go to jail or they end up with a lawsuit. And I'm not going to jail for anybody here in this country. So that's the answer to the question.
Thank you. Now that now the wall of the residential building is cracking due to the current excavations without permits. So who is to be held responsible for the damage? Government or the developer?
So again, the discussions around who's being held responsible, that basically now falls into civil law. So when a permit is issued, to which a permit is issued, how we feel about the permit now is personal. The fact that the permit is issued, what has to now happen is that anything that happens with the construction has to be dealt with within civil law. What is the caveat is that there is no civil works permits, as I stated, and as such, confirmed this morning, we will now move forward and make sure those things are rectified.
But if you would live there,
Thank you,
what would
Minister
you do?
Jacqueline. We would allow the rest of the media to also get another round of questions. Thank you, Minister Gums. We now move on to the second round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. I'm calling back the Prime Minister, please. Prime Minister Marcelina, I was about to ask you before the questions move on. I believe last week it was that the bidding process went out for the insurance for a government vehicle 2025. Can you tell me if all the government vehicles on the road are driving with insurance or without insurance? Are the vehicles insured? Because based on what I know, the bidding only took place last week. And also 2 or 3 weeks ago when you were here, I asked you about the Chinese company Huawei and Telem. Your chief of staff promised that after it was discussed with the Council of Ministers, you will get back to me. I've never received an answer. I understood that even BTP was not informed about the Chinese company. Can you give us some details on that?
Yes, the vehicles from government are insured. So that's the answer number question. That is answer question number one. The Huawei company that is engaged with Telem, the answer is confirmed yes, they are working. And they are engaged also with work activities in Curaçao and also in the Netherlands. So they are a reliable company doing what they have to do. If BTP is informed or not by Telem, that I cannot confirm to you. On that question, we will have to direct that question to Telem.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would now like to invite Emily.
My question is for the Minister of Finance.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
Yes, Minister, almost without fail, every minister who gets up speaks about how their ministry's budget is insufficient and that they don't have sufficient staff, etc. If I understand, the government's budget is about 580 million guilders. Could you please let us know what is the budget that government actually needs for all of the ministries to be able to perform properly? And given that I understand compliance is less than 50%, isn't compliance the one thing that government needs to solve, and how much money would that be sufficient to make up the gap that government of the budget that government actually needs?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Indeed, you are absolutely correct. Every ministry comes up and they basically say that the current budget as it is not sufficient. And I do understand that. However, the unique thing about this is that you have now 4 political parties that are coming together to finalize what the Prime Minister just indicated, which is the governing program. In there, as well as the fact that by March, and we are in the month of March already, every ministry is supposed to indicate their wish list, their wishes for what they want within their respective ministries. That being said, we need to definitely look at the priorities for this country, what we deem as priorities with regards to the governing program. And in that, then I would get to see exactly where the various ministries feel they need that extra where budget is concerned. That's one. Compliance, yes, is a next factor. In addition to compliance, though, we definitely need to understand the legalities. There's a lot of red tape. Since I assumed position, I mean, to know the red tape that we have to go through just to get things done. For example, Mr. Lee, I can tell you, and the PM knows this as well, we've discussed this even up to last night, the fact that that 2% indexation plus the 1% vacation allowance that is due to the civil servants is yet to be done in terms of the law. Yes, it's allocated in the budget, but the law isn't there as yet. So I say this to say that coming together to finalize what is actually needed per ministry is something that we will be sitting down to go over, especially as it pertains to the 2026 budget. But you can understand that in looking at 2026 budget, realizing where we are not even finalized yet, and when I say not finalized, because 2025 budget is still yet not enacted. So our focus, and my focus, the PM for sure as well, was making sure that we get this situation concluded.
So for clarity, I'm actually looking for a number. Your budget is 580. As the Minister of Finance, I would imagine that you would have an idea of what your target budget is. And in terms of compliance, I'm referring to people who have obligations to pay their taxes not paying their taxes, thereby not allowing you to have the budget that you require?
Yeah, well, in reference to a figure, it would be nice to give a figure. I need to also look at what my respective ministries feel that they need within their budget. So allow me to come back to you, Mr. Lee, on a specific round-off figure. In addition to compliance, I've had a meeting with my tax department and compliance and ex officio tax assessments and the obligations of persons who do not file their taxes, getting these ex officio assessments because they did not file. The first thing that we really need to acknowledge is that you have a requirement, and your requirement is to file your taxes. That's number one. If you do not file, it's very difficult, A, for us to then assume what that total amount would be. So then these ex officio assessments are sent out. Once they are sent out, then it's up to you then to do your due diligence and actually filing. We are looking at other means in terms of getting proper audits done through the SBAP, through the ATS. Those two are key factors in making sure that people do what they're supposed to do in terms of actually having to pay their actual taxes.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I would now like to invite Jacqueline. You have the final question.
I would like to ask a question to the Minister of Justice and the Prime Minister. I don't know who wants to answer. Citizens affected by decisions of government have a very hard time to get legal representation, as a lot of law firms on the island will state that they have a conflict of interest because they, for instance, in the case of developers, either defend the developers or the government. And in the case of the Westview, the government lawyer is defending the developer. So where do you go when you are affected as a citizen by decisions or inaction of government and have to pay to foot the bill for that? And you cannot find legal presentation, or you have to go outside the island and pay up to $15,000 just for the injunction.
I think there's a couple different layers to this question. So it's not about kind of the basic social, the gele kaart, as we call it, or the which is meant for people under a certain threshold. So labor cases, people that have been fired, those people have a right then to free legal representation, or rather subsidized legal representation from the government. And those are called the yellow card procedures. But again, we mostly see those in labor cases. And then, of course, in criminal law, then we also provide lawyers through the government, and the so-called piquetregeling, and all of those are paid for by the Ministry of Justice. More specifically to your question, I think this is a question of scale and a matter that has to do just with the size of the island. If we look over to Seba, which until very recently didn't even have a lawyer on the island at all, Statia has no lawyer on the island, and in that case, they work with law firms from here. Similarly, everybody that's barred in St. Martin is barred to practice in all countries within the Dutch Caribbean, so Aruba, Curaçao, Bonaire, and the BES. Aruba, Curaçao, St. Martin, and the BES. So I think that at the end of the day, those are the options if you cannot find an attorney locally, which to me also, we have quite a lot of lawyers here on this island. I think it's over 50. So then it becomes, I think a matter of maybe you just don't like the selection that you have here, but then of course you're always open to looking for an attorney that's barred to practice within the Dutch Caribbean. So you could always go to Curaçao and Aruba, and if you really couldn't find anybody, you could even find a lawyer in the Netherlands and ask the judge to admit them to handle that specific case if they could not work with a local attorney here, but technically you have to partner with an attorney here locally. So to answer the question of where you go, those are the options. If it comes to an inaction of government or a failure of government, as I say, we have the customer service of government, which is the ombudsman, and you could file a complaint there. But of course, that is of a different nature than I need to file an injunction. So I think there's the question is, what exactly are we trying to address? But I think there are options available, and maybe we can, do a better job at communicating what those options are. But hopefully, then people know where they can go now.
Can I ask one follow-up question?
Thank you. Sure, go ahead.
During the press briefing, it's always said you can send your questions in writing. But generally, we don't receive answers, and that's for the past 3.5 years that I've been working for the newspaper. Never receive answers from ministers in writing. So would we be able to send questions and get answers in writing, please?
Sure. I mean, I haven't received any in writing so far, and I think Ms. Shaw knows very well that when she asks me questions, that I answer right away. And I think equally for Mr. Lee. So of course I can provide my email, and of course we can get to them. Sometimes maybe not be able to answer them as quickly as the press may want, but of course if there's a priority and an urgency to it, then we can do that. But I can't speak for my fellow ministers, but I believe that everybody has the same, at least in this cabinet, the same idea about that.
Thank you, Minister Tackling. Minister Gums, okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just to clarify one statement made of a conflict of interest with the government lawyer, with the lawyer of the developer. As expressed by Ms. Tackling, a conflict of interest in a very small entity is very easy to find, and I think it's very important to realize that a conflict of interest would only exist if said lawyer advises government on or in a case involving the same developer. This is exactly why last week in our press briefing, I have to investigate this statement made, simply because if at any stage we requested information about this development from our government lawyer and he was involved knowingly as the developer's lawyer, that's a conflict of interest. That has not been the case. What has happened from what I've seen thus far, and in any future incidences with this development, of course, most naturally, we will find a third party outside of who we regularly use. I just want to make that clear, that a conflict of interest doesn't exist because two people are in the same room. It is the intention of whatever they're engaging in that causes a conflict. So I think in any perception at all, even of a conflict, that will be addressed by my person as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. As previously mentioned, you can always send your questions in writing to the Minister's Cabinet. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, TelTV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel, Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rebecca Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.